Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be taking you through the Colorado chess gambit, and by the end of this video you'll be able to do the following things. Number one, to defend against the king side. Number two, to create an attack, especially from the king side. Then number three, to play against opposite castled king sides. You'll be able to understand the center counter play, be able to understand how to attack the weak side of the king and to defend against the weak side of the king. The gambit arises after e4, knight c6, knight f3, and the surprise move, which is f5. There are very many choices in this position. There is pawn takes, there is knight h4, and even there is declining the gambit and then playing e5. We are going to focus on pawn takes or knight h4. So in one of my games, my opponent played pawn takes f5, then I played d5, and also you see white has a variety of choices, but in my game my opponent played bishop d3, then I played knight h6. Knight h6 is adding another attacker to the pawn. Now two pieces attacking the pawn, so my opponent played knight h4, just trying to defend the pawn which is on f5. So I went ahead to play e5. Now e5, there's no time for en passant because the queen is attacking the knight and the knight looks to be a hanging piece. So in my game, my opponent played queen h5 check, and then I played knight f7, defending my rook on h8 and blocking against the check from the queen. My opponent played knight c3, developing a piece, played g6, and g6 gives white two choices to play, but in my game my opponent played f times g6, and after pawn takes g6 I went ahead to win my game comfortably, because now after the pawn is attacking the queen and also the knight is hanging. Let's go back. Knight h4, then we begin with f times e4, queen h5 check, g6, knight times g6. This is the main line, and then we play knight f6. Now knight f6 gives white two choices, and remember the white queen has to keep an eye on this column, because the knight, if it leaves this column, the knight will be a hanging piece. So in case of queen h3, black can play d5, and the queen can open up a discover attack to the queen. So let's look at queen h4. In case of queen h4, we can go ahead and play rook g8, and if knight goes to f5, the rook can come and take the free piece, because now the rook will be attacking the queen at the same time the knight. So that one is not a good move. So in case of knight takes f8, we just take the rook times f8 and the game is equal. In case of knight h6 and then opponent plays queen h5, then you can go ahead and play g6. After f times g6, you can still just play h times g6. In case of queen times g6, then we can play knight f7, knight f3 to stop the knight from coming to the this knight from coming to this square. We go ahead and play rook h6. In case of queen g3, then bishop f5. Now bishop f5 tries to create a square for this rook to challenge the queen, which is on g3. So d4, then we go ahead and play rook g6. In case of queen h4, then queen d7. Now queen d7 is just trying to open up for the king to go and do long castling. At the same time, we can try it also to drop more pawns in the center and open up the game, because now we shall be putting our king to safety. Let's go back. In this position, after knight times g6, we can try to remember the queen is threatening to move the knight so that he can give a discovered check. So we bring in an intermezzo, which is bishop g4. Now queen has two choices to play. In case of queen d5, then we can begin with rook g8, just pinning down the two pieces. And what I can say in this position, white has to fight so hard to move away, to jump away from the pin. In case of queen h4, we can begin with queen d6. Now, queen d6 is a sneaky move. White has no time to take the rook on h8. In case of rook knight times h8, now here there is a checkmate which is looming. After queen e6 check, then bishop e2, and then queen times e2 is a checkmate. In case of pawn takes f5, then we can go ahead and play d5. In one of the games between two grandmasters, that is Kasparov-Sergei and Kruzentoben, Kasparov-Sergei continued with pawn d4, and Toben went ahead to play bishop takes c5. And in this position, Kasparov-Sergei went ahead to play bishop b5. And after bishop b5, Toben played e6, knight e5. And after playing knight e5, remember the knight is overloaded because it is being attacked by the bishop at the same time attacked by the knight. So Toben just played knight g e7, and after queen h5 check by Sergei Kasparov, GM Toben just played g6. And when Kasparov played queen e2, just centering his queen in the center, just putting his queen in the center, Toben played bishop g7. Now in this game, there are a variety of choices to play. There is pawn move and there is bishop move. But in the game, bishop g5. Now all these pieces are pinned. The bishop has pinned the knight, and also this bishop has pinned the knight against the king. And in this position, ladies and gentlemen, GM Toben played short castling. Now remember remember this knight is pinned. So White utilized this chance to play bishop times c6, because he knew that after bishop times c6, pawn takes, then the knight can take, and this knight will be a hung piece. But to his surprise, GM Toben, ladies and gentlemen, he played knight times c6, a very strong move, sacrificing a full queen. Then bishop times d8, knight times d4, attacking the queen, at the same time threatening to check and win the rook, which is on a1. Queen d2, knight times c2, check, king e2, bishop times e5. Now, after bishop times e5, in this position, the white rook is hanging, at the same time the bishop is hanging. So, because white's pieces were not connected, white decided to go ahead and play knight c3, because now he wants to connect his pieces. In the game, GM Toben played rook takes bishop on d8. After rook sc1, played d4, just attacking the knight in the center. After knight d1, bishop e4. Then bishop e4 is trying to open up. It's trying to open up for the rook, at the same time attacking the pawn, which is on g2, attacking the bishop at the same time defending the pawn, which is on g2. So black went ahead to play d3, check, king f1, and then d2, just emphasizing the strength of the pawn. After rook b1, black played bishop f4, and with this, Kasparov went ahead to resign the game because of discontinuation. g7, there is knight d4, defending the pawn, at the same time threatening to take the rook, which is on b1, at the same time threatening the bishop check to d3. In case of king moving to g2, then the knight can come in with check, and in case the king comes back, there is a double check of bishop at the same time knight. So it is a little bit tricky, and with all this, white decided to throw the towel. You can see the strength of Colorado Gambit.